So we've got a wonderful program planned for you today. And actually, after sort of a crazy week for many of you out there, this is a very timely topic to see if our playbooks are in order. We've got to get our house back in order or make some adjustments to win the game. So let's go ahead and get started with our program. First, some housekeeping things, and I just want to go over quickly just the agenda with you guys, as well as if you're joining us today and need those CPE credits, please let us know by completing the survey towards the end of the program today. You will be receiving an email tomorrow, and which will allow you to upload the information to your CPE accounts. But you have to stay through the entire webinar and complete the survey in order to receive that information. So, as I mentioned, we've got just a great program for us today. We're going to hear from each of our panelists. And of course, we'll hear a little bit more what Cisco's doing in the thick of things. We'll have some great interaction on the panel discussion. There's a little bit of a football theme going on. So, I got my New England Patriots shirt on. And of course, I've got my Cisco Yeti here. So we're going to have a lot of fun. And then on the Q&A subject, so if you have a question while we're talking and chatting, let us know and enter that in the Q&A chat window, and we will answer your questions at 2:35 today. We'll do our best to answer as many of them as possible. But do ask those questions while you think of them, because it is really top of mind, and we want to answer as many as possible. And then we'll sign off at 2:45 Eastern Standard Time, giving you a few minutes. Check your email for your 3 o'clock meeting. So let's go ahead and get started and meet our panelists for today. So we got Tomas Maldonado, Chief Information Security Officer with the NFL. Tomas, what's going on? Oh, you got to unmute us.
I got to unmute first. You would think I would know that after being on Zoom for on different sort of video conferences for the past almost 2 years now.
I know. I feel like we're it's all we're in the digital world.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm back in the office. It's great to be here. And thanks, Marcy, and thanks, Pam. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Well, thanks for joining us. It's nice to see you. And Pam, good to have you here today. What's going on with you? And tell us a little bit all the great things that Cisco's got going on.
Thanks, Marcy, for having me. And Tomas, it's good to see you again this week. Being around you and your team last week was phenomenal. So I appreciate spending 2 weeks in a row with you. Lucky me. So Marcy, I'm a part of a group here at Cisco. We're called the CISO Advisor Group, and we work throughout our customer base, and we talk to CISOs all around the globe. We are formed here to help elevate the CISO conversation in our organization, to basically be the translator between folks like Tomas and making sure that they're being heard. And that is that's something that I'm really passionate about, is the language that we use all over the world in terms of security, and how we make it simplistic for people to understand us even more as we go throughout the times and what we're challenged with the cyber world. Communication shouldn't be our problem, right? So this group also is rebuilding our executive forum. It's called CISO Connections. If you're interested in that, reach out to me. And we also give back to our community. We are embedding in the community any way that I can help you in that space as well. That's what we're all about, making sure that we're pulling up the next generation of leaders, that we're making sure that we're giving back into those communities in good and positive ways. So certainly, if you're interested in being a part of that group and having us talk to you, feel free to reach out. It's good to see you, Marcy.
Thanks Pam, and it's great to see you too. And it's really exciting to hear all the things that you guys have going on at Cisco. Well, how about we jump into our first topic for today, which is preparing for the attack in offense mode as the time clock is always running. And I think we saw that completely this week. It's a fact, as you guys know, hackers and cyber criminals are often targeting the unwitting employees to unleash havoc on a company and security professionals alike. But time is never on the side of a security team, no matter what type of crisis we're in. In the time of a breach, as you guys know, time works against your company, as there's no opportunity to call a timeout. But it's estimated from the Ponemon Institute that on average, it is about 191 days for a cyber attack to have free reign in an environment from the time they get in. And this is kind of known as the dwelling time. But however, many of the will argue that the breach security defense is complete their objective in just a matter of days overall. So, I mean, the time clock is always running is what I'm really trying to say. So regardless of that time frame, every minute and every hour of the day is really can make a difference how an organization fares for the better or for the worse. And the security teams have to have their playbooks in place. So that really also includes you're having your CISO, your CIO, and your CEO, and your business line leaders knowing what's really important and what's not, and who has to play what role overall. So let's talk a little bit about this, Pam. We know fundamentally that the partnership between an organization's CISO and CEO is absolutely crucial. And we've seen that really tandem out in the last several months with these ransomware type of attacks. So it's really the basis also, I think, of a truly successful enterprise security program when you have that relationship that's really there in that rapport. So with that in mind, what can you tell us today about how CISOs can best understand the needs of the business and promote a cybersecurity first mindset on an organizational scale? And perhaps they might be having to educate that CEO on the importance of that for the first time, because they might not have thought of it, or it has been an afterthought. So tell us what you're kind of out there thinking and hearing.
Yeah, it's a great topic, and it varies based on size and vertical. But my advice always is embed yourself in the business. Understand where your critical assets are, what your critical data is, your crown jewels, whatever you describe them as. Understand in your organization what's important for your organization, and then how you protect that. The embedding in the business side. When you have an attack or when you're in a crisis mode, that's not the time to make friends. You're going to need those friends in a crisis mode, so it's best to get to know them. I just talked to someone this morning, a CISO. He's new to the organization, and he understands the value of a relationship and has not built those yet, and that's his top priority. Understanding the business lines, understanding where they sit, understanding who he can call on, and enveloping them in his processes in terms of how he's going to lean on them in times of crisis. Not only the business side, understanding where the crown jewels are and what's important to the business. If you cannot speak in business terms to your CEO and show the value of security in business terms, you more often than not will fail. So understanding how to talk to your business in their own language is super important. And enabling them as a business, being seen as someone who can help them enable what they're trying to achieve. If you're on a growth strategy, are you a part of the M&A process? Are you a part of that due diligence? Are you helping them understand the risk? Are you talking in terms of risk to your business partner? So those are all the key elements that I think make a successful relationship with the business.
You bring up some great points. And, I think what you're saying is really the secret to winning here is to have the cybersecurity and business goals enable each other to achieve the greater success overall. But there's sort of give and take. You got to meet each other halfway too. So knowing what motivates, your CEO, as well as your other business leaders, and then participants that are part of your security team, and expanding the collaboration, thinking about a cyber attack like a SolarWinds, if that affected you, or the one that we're kind of faced with right now. So, Tomas, I'd love to get your thoughts on sort of your secrets to winning. You've been a very, very successful chief information security officer working in multiple industries since I've ever known you. And what has always stood out to me is your ability to communicate and articulate the value proposition and the realities of the problem, and then sell the security program that you've been able to implement. So help us here understand sort of your secrets to winning.
Yeah, no, look, I think, Marcy, you touched on, a lot, I'll call it a few key items that are essential to that recipe of success, if you will, right? I think the other aspects that I typically try to focus in on, and Pam mentioned a bit of this around the collaboration and getting that business engagement and speaking in business term, is trying to really keep your message simple and I'll call it plain English, right? If you ever gone to a mechanic to get your car fixed, and the mechanic comes back to you and says, "Yeah, I've got to change the catalytic converter or this, that, or the third," and you're like, "I have no idea what this guy is telling me or girl telling me, and I'm just gonna pay the bill and be on my way." Well, you don't want your board or your business leaders or your CEO to have that same experience with you. So you need to try to translate and keep it as simplistic as possible and then put it into and translate it into words that they will understand from a business context, which is what Pam was essentially sort of getting to. So, for me, a successful security program, a successful CISO, and even folks that work within within your organization is to build that relationship and that sort of collaboration with your stakeholders. Ensure that you're working cohesively and that you fully understand the mission, right? The mission of the organization and the mission of your business, of your key business stakeholder. I think those are very critical recipes for success. And obviously, teamwork. I work at the NFL. It's nothing but teams. I mean, there are some great leaders within different teams that pull off sort of very interesting moments. And I see you sporting the Patriots shirt there. But one of it takes a village, or it takes a very good team to collaborate. And so extending out to your counterparts in different parts of the organization, ensuring that you're plugged in and that you have that broad sort of view and broad sort of thought process around not only how can security help, but how can it also enable, and then where is the business trying to go, is really what the conversations you want to have as a CISO and as a security leader. So that's been helpful for me in my career. I still think I'm growing and learning, so I'm sure there's a lot more for me to learn and grow. But so far, those key tips have helped me immensely.
Well, you bring up great points and a perfect segue to our second topic today, Tomas. So it's about taking action, and tackling the risk and blocking the impact of the cyber attack overall. I just have to tell you, I had a blast looking up all the football terminology and coming up and applying it to cybersecurity. So it just kind of lends itself for us to be here together. So excuse that the folks at home or in the offices today, there's going to be some cliches here, but I just really couldn't resist the putting in the parallels together. So anyway, as we know, we've talked about the CISOs really do face a lot of challenges out there about deploying the technology to keep the business secure. And sometimes, it is impactful and sometimes it's not. And the company's operations are impacted, overall. But keeping that balance, is really, really difficult, especially when you have to have visibility into your systems and to the control points within those systems. And many organizations, what I have seen just overall is that they have not prioritized a lot of this with the systems in their quarantine mode. If they were to be compromised, what can they take offline? This is really just because some organizations have a one size fits all type of approach out there. And that's just, it doesn't work at the end of the day, because every company is unique and has its own ins and outs in every day. What stood out to me was reading this report from Gartner that it said that 73% of the standard audit questions that were out there really were about the existence of controls, but had no performance measurements based in them. So it's great that you have these controls, but there was no performance to align with it. So again, I'm an action-oriented lady. You guys are action-oriented folks as well. So talking about the risks of maintaining that user productivity, because we got to keep moving. I mean, our businesses can't just sort of stop. And as I mentioned earlier, there's no timeouts for any of this. So we've got to really have real-time insights, but we've also got to be realistic too of what we can do. So Tomas, this is a question for you. You, again, are a very experienced security executive, and we know that these threat actors will figure out how to sort of disable the data or the data leak, or just have access to it, and could even cripple our operations and even harm our reputation. Would we want the NFL to be compromised by a cybersecurity hacker and we couldn't have Sunday football? What would we be doing on Sundays? But really, when you have applied a risk-based type of approach to your prioritization in your business mission critical services, supporting your customers and products and services, how does that enable, your purpose when you come into the office now, and well, even when you were working remotely, how does that really make it happen as, you know, a football fan and your employees and everything like that? How does it make the world go around?
Well, what it does is it helps you, right? So that prioritization exercise, or the way you think about, excuse me, what's critical to your organization, it helps you focus in on applying the right levels of controls and protections for the most critical assets. And those assets could be people, those assets could be data, and those assets could be digital systems or services. So ensuring that you have that view across your in and across your organization, it'll help you apply the right levels of controls. And when there's an incident, you won't start you can focus in on the right things and remediate the right things, and make sure that you're able to then measure by way of either KPIs or your overall so key performance indicators or overall key risk indicators. You can measure the effectiveness of the controls on those most valuable assets. So that's what I think is usually very beneficial for CISOs to sort of focus in on, and their organizations. When we think about the standard blocking and tackling, and you can sort of talk about the most recent the most recent vulnerability, which is probably one of the biggest ones that we've seen in the industry, at least in my 20 some odd years doing this. You could boil the ocean per se, or you can ensure that you're focusing in on the critical assets first, and then working your way out from that, from that sort of core perimeter, if you will. Then you'll be able to be more effective, and then you can have a better conversation with your senior stakeholders, because the conversation will most likely surround you having to answer the question, are we protected, are we secure? And if you're able to then relay back to those individuals and say, we are protected or we're secure in our most critical assets, and we're working towards the remainder of the population of assets, and help them understand what those assets are, right? Again, as I mentioned, people, data, as well as servers. They'll be able to appreciate the amount of stress that you're under, and then you won't look like you're, running around, in some sort of frenzy. You'll be more organized and more coordinated in your approach.
Well, I think you're really striking a chord with me here, because it's really about creating balance, right? So you have to prioritize, but it's still a balancing act in keeping your workforce productive, and the business secure when you're dealing with a 0 day. And I think the log4j2 is really just the perfect example of if of the whole thing going on. I mean, it's been really astounding how well organized our security community, from CISA all the way down, has been able to respond to the whole situation, and being there, and keeping that balancing act in place, and just collaborating and communicating overall. So, for some, I think there might be a little bit of crisis mode, but I think for many, actually, people are, obviously heads down, but an even keel kind of in reacting to one of the largest ones out there to date. So, Pam, what are you seeing? How are you thinking people need to create a balance in keeping the workforce still productive, and then create that business secure right now as we are during a 0 day? And do you think a playbook makes the difference, and what should be in it?
Absolutely, a playbook makes a difference. Practice, practice. I had a mentor once that told me a long time ago, practice makes perfect. And if you don't believe it, just get into a crisis situation and not have one, and not know who your contacts are, and not have those processes that help guide you in those moments. Um, in my experience, we had various processes for severity level, right? So, and based on that, those processes were built in conjunction with business, with infrastructure, with apps dev, and they actually signed off on the process. And that gave them some power in that process, and it ensured that you had an agreement, you had a handshake before you were in a critical situation. Those were all key tips that I learned through the years. One other thing is that you come back together after an event, right? And you update those processes, and you talk about what you think worked, what didn't work, the baselines, how you shared information along the way, what was powerful, what wasn't. Those additive flavors to your processes over time, as you grow and learn inside your organization, the better you'll be in the time of crisis. So it's almost like exercising a tabletop for your 0 days, right? And just engaging the business, your stakeholders in the situation, and really just bringing them in up front and making sure that they understand that they're a key player. They're they're on the field too. I had a leader once, and he used football analogies all the time. Like, I don't want anybody on the sidelines. I want people who are playing, that are in the game, and it's a way in which you can encourage your partners, your stakeholders that you need to generate those reports, to generate your remediation efforts, to talk about who's on first. Those are all the key components of success when you're in that crisis mode.
So, here we are, in a crisis. For some people are in a crisis mode or have been heads down trying to really decipher all this, but it's really about the partnership. So here we are, we'll go transitioning to our third topic, but really playing on the football theme, touchdown, winning the game by really building those trusted partnerships. But what was really stood out to me this week is actually, the work that CIS has been on the front end doing a lot of outreach. So we're, as cybersecurity professionals, we're in the business of trust, and fostering those trusted relationships is how I think security professionals can improve the protections against threat actors who are, adapting every single day and re-engineering other things out there and methods, and really getting more sophisticated, even targeting remote workers and OT type of environments. So, we have a lot of these defenses out there. We have great technology, but we're certainly a lot more complicated in terms of our environments. We're in hybrid clouds that are multi-tenant with different types of cloud providers. I mean, it's really kind of mind-boggling to see how quickly we've evolved and advanced than we were even just a few months, even 2 years ago before some of this, because the pandemic certainly has pushed us fast forward in a lot of ways. But overall, when you're operating in the cloud, as we know, and the more sophisticated and the more complex these architectures have become, there's vulnerabilities like what we're just seeing right now that just became unknown and now 0-day threats overall. So, Tomas, I'm going to kind of jump to you. With these cyber attacks getting harder and harder out there and more expensive to pull off, especially now with so many companies operating in the cloud, would you agree or disagree that it's really just a better defense paired with a proactive approach to mean that you have a threat actor to do more work or break into a target? Or does it even just deter them, like to go find another place to, go try to play ball?
No, I do. I agree with that sentiment, and I agree with the statement, right? I worked for a good CISO in my career who always said, attackers have bosses as well, right? And it's true, right? You think about the different types of threat actors that are out there, and if I focus in on a few key ones, right? You've got sort of the nation states, which have a ton of money and resources that they can throw at trying to solve problems, and I'm using solve problems as a code word for hacking into companies for whatever reason, right? And they'll operate as if it was a 9 to 5 job operation for them, and you will see that in your logs, right? If you were to look at your sort of intrusion detection logs, intrusion prevention logs, or firewall logs, you'll see that between 9 to 5 for whatever location that's local to that region or country, you'll see that there's a lot of activity, and then on the weekends there's minimal activity. Well, that's an indication that this is an operation that's very well organized, and it's an operation that's probably very well funded, but it is a day-to-day that is a day-to-day sort of job that they operate in, right? So the goal as us, folks playing defense, is to try to, one, deter them, and some effective ways of deterring them is by making it expensive for them to essentially break into a target. And the way you make it expensive is you make it time consuming. You make them essentially exhaust their resources to the point where they decide, you know what, let's move on to another target, because it's just not going to be cost better. That return on investment is not a good ROI for them, right? So if you think about it in that context, as your attackers have bosses or have some sort of P&L sheet, right? And they're trying to map their attacks and the success of their attacks to that sort of P&L sheet, and get a return on investment. Your goal as a defender is to try to help them or make them exhaust their resources and exhaust their money, so that way they don't have a good return on investment and they'll move on to maybe a softer target. So I absolutely agree with that statement. I think it's right in line with what we've seen and several companies that I've worked for in my career, from just doing analysis of our logs and types of threat actors that were always after us. We've seen the same thing. Obviously, there's other types of threat actors out there. I call it hobbyists, folks that are just hanging out on the weekend and they're a little bit bored. And we saw a lot of that during the pandemic, right? With a lot of folks being home, working remote, or just having teenage age kids, and I'll call it very curious individuals who just had nothing else to do. So we saw a lot of that mixed in with the more organized, but it's the same sort of principles, right? If you're bored and if you're trying to defend against a bored attacker, chances are they're going to get bored with you as a target. If they're not able to be successful, they're going to move on to the next one. So I agree, and I'll pass it back over to you, Marcy.
Well, I love that we're on the same page in our playbooks and overall. Pam, adopting these new playbooks, because for some companies, I think it's actually a newer thought process to do these tabletop exercises and do them on a more regular basis. So having that insightful information for your control points and have your ability to really partner with the cybersecurity vendor community and the law enforcement if needed. So we're actively seeking out industry alliance. I think one of the things that's really special about our industry is our ability to collaborate, even amongst competitors of companies, with our different ISACs, if you think about that as well. So what do you think about, is it the way of us really being unique in our collaboration and kind of setting, again, those competitive lines aside? Is that the way in building these alliances? Can we really defeat those adversaries in the long run by working together and collaborating?
So I think we've got to be creative, right? Like we can't stop. We have to maintain that constant vigilance against the attackers. And Tomas, I got to experience something last week with him, where he had a roundtable with law enforcement, CISA, vendors, social media, just all kinds of presence. And he brought together this entire team. And it was incredible to talk through the various scenarios and to work together. I cannot tell you, I haven't seen that particular playbook executed at the size and just the significance before. It was incredible. It was great to see people spawning off ideas. And anytime you share information, you get better. I could see light bulbs going off in different CISO's eyes, like, ooh, I didn't think of that. Like, I might put that in my playbook, right? So bringing people together like that, like what a great experience. And I just thought that showed Tomas's leadership and his openness to share, which is what we have to do going forward. We have to band together. And that's really why I came to Cisco. I was so frustrated with the portfolio and with just the orchestration that it involves for large security organizations. And I wanted to go somewhere to make an impact in the security space. And Cisco is a great place to be because they're an incredible partner in this space. And I'd be remiss to say, they have one of the largest intelligence groups in the world. And that backbone to a company like Cisco with their world-class researchers, analysts, and engineers, that's incredible. That's who we need working together to solve these complex, difficult problems that are continuing to trend in different ways. We're having to learn how to pivot in different ways. And the only way to win is to work together, to band together.
So for the rapid fire 3-point goal here, I'm going to ask you each a rapid fire question, and then we're going to jump into our Q&A. By sharing data and collaboration, do we enable us to be more effective in our responses and better predict future techniques to deter those adversaries out there and their efforts put forth? Yes or no, Tomas?
Yes, it does.
Pam?
Absolutely, 100%.
I love it. I had a lot of fun. Now we have a lot of questions from our audience. So let's go ahead and hear what they have to say. We're a little ahead of schedule. So if you guys have questions at home and want to ask us, please do. Go ahead and put that in the Q&A chat window. So our first question is from, let's see, Nita Davis. In your experience, do you have support from the board in terms of embracing security first? I love that she incorporated that in the question. Security first at all levels in the organization to help drive a culture of change? Or is the security culture still something that the CISO has to evangelize? So Pam, I'm going to go to you because this is really part of what you do now at Cisco.
Right. It, it it depends, and I know people don't like that answer, but it really does depend on the size of the organization. It depends on the vertical. It, it's interesting, Marcy. I've met with quite a few CISOs over the past 4 months, and if you haven't met with me, come meet with me because I'm hearing a lot of great work that's out there, and it's very exciting to be a part of the conversation in ways that I haven't been before. But what I'm hearing is, if in fact they have a CISO, that CISO possibly has to evangelize, right, for the first time. But also CISOs that have been in play for a while, there's organizational churn, right? There's board members come and go, and you still have to educate. So I think that's going to be a part of the modern day CISO's job henceforth. Like you just can't get away from it. You're going to have to continuously talk about, hey, this is going to be a constant problem, right? That we've got to solve together. And it doesn't end, right? In next year's strategy session, right? Like this is constant vigilance that we've got to maintain. There are also organizations that we know that don't have a named CISO, that they bring in people like me to help talk to their executive team about what it means to to be a security first or security conscious organization. It takes everyone. So I think there are different flavors. Some have the advantage of having people on their boards and or executive staff that have gone through table topics before, so they've had that experience and they can help bring everyone along. But I think it just depends, Marcy. And quite frankly, if you need help, reach out.
I agree. Asking for help is a good thing out there. Tomas, do you want to add to anything that Pam said on that?
I do, and I was gonna say something similar along the lines of it does depend, right? And what I'll elaborate on is, you have to think about your board as as a body of people governing your organization, and nobody, right, even you as a regular person, wants to be not secure, right? No, the board doesn't wake up in the morning and say, I don't want to be secure, I don't want to have a secure organization. They wake up with that in mind. That said, their part of their responsibilities is to ensure that there's other governing practices to help things like revenue and profit and all that other stuff in the mix of managing risk for the organization, right? So the concept of security first depends by organization from organization, depending upon what industry you're in, right? But I'm a firm believer that no board member wakes up and says, "Nah, I don't really care about security." Now, what I do know and what I have experienced is that there might be different variations of what security actually means to them as a board member or to them as their organization, as a governing body for the organization, right? Security or information security or cybersecurity, and for us to even say those words in the same sentence and say them differently could mean different things to those individuals that you're presenting to. And so it's critical for CISOs to always try to gauge the pulse, right? Check with the senior leaders of your organization and figure out, what level of engagement does your audience at that board level have, and what level of understanding do they have when you say things like cybersecurity or information security or just security in general. And I think that'll help you fully appreciate and understand their opinion on your function. And it'll help you fully understand and appreciate how you can better relay your ideas, your initiatives to them in a way that resonates with those specific individuals. So I definitely think security first is an interesting topic. I also think it depends on the level of maturity of the organization, especially the board. And again, nobody wakes up thinking that with the thought in mind, I want to get hacked today.
I would agree with that. All right. Well, our next question is from Matt Whitmarsh, and he says, I really like the concept your attackers have bosses too. What are some key concepts, techniques, and or controls to ensure that you make it too expensive for them so they choose another attack or another environment elsewhere? It's like having the burglar alarm
Yeah,
and having the
yeah,
big sign out front of your house, right? And the big
absolutely.
dog in the window.
Absolutely. So I can't take credit for that. Phil Venables, who most of you know, was the one that said that, and he's one of the great CISOs that I had an opportunity to work for in my career while I was at Goldman Sachs. But look, if I might date myself with this comment, but if you think about years ago with the club, right? Remember that little club device that you would put in your steering wheel to lock your steering wheel in your car so nobody would steal your car? Maybe we only saw it in New York City because there was a lot of car theft, but the point I'm trying to make is that device was placed on the weakest part of the car, which is the steering wheel, right? Think about when you get into an accident, the steering wheel bends so that you don't get hurt. So you put this device on the weakest part of the car, but it's not really to secure the car. It's to be a visual aid so that the person that wants to steal your car says, "Oh, you know what? I'm gonna go to the next car because I don't want to have to deal with the time it's gonna take to break open that club to then take your car because somebody, a policeman, might actually see me stealing your car, right? So you want to slow them down. So Marcy, you're right? The dog in the window, right? The cameras. What are those things when you think about your specific security program? We always used to talk about security in the concept of an onion, right? You have different layers of that onion. And what you want to do is you want to make it very difficult for the attacker as they get through the layers of the onion, right? That's why we have the concept of DMZs, and we put web services in DMZs, and we mix and match up our technology to really focus in on different sort of attacks that you're seeing, but also to start to be canaries, right? To sound the alarm so that your team can then start to detect and be able to respond, but also to slow down those adversaries. That's where things like honeypots, came up and have become effective, right? And now we start to sort of shift into this concept of zero trust, don't trust anything, which makes sense, but it's the same sort of concept of how do you slow the attacker's path, make it very difficult, time consuming for them, and chances are they're going to move to the softer target. I'm not going to say the softer target might be the other leagues because I do work with the other league CISOs and they are really good. So hopefully it'll shift to a completely different industry when they try to attack the NFL.
Well, absolutely. So our last question is from Gary Sprague. Let's see, what do they turn to make sure that they have everything covered? A few companies are still in recovery mode with the pandemic still ongoing. And what words of advice do you have for smaller companies that still want to stay vigilant? I'm going to let you both answer this overall. And we've got one more question after that. So I want to make sure we get Robert Pace's question in. So how do we help some of the more smaller companies that are still trying to recover out there?
I'll go first, Pam,
Sure.
if you want. Look, I think again, I mentioned this early on. Make sure that you take a risk-based approach, prioritize and focus in on the critical assets first, and ensure that you have the right level of controls in that space, and then work your way out to the other assets. You might, if you're in a smaller company, chances are you have not only minimal resources and on your team, but you probably have a budget that is probably not adequate enough for what you desire and need. So you need to be creative. You need to try to work with your partners, try to ensure that you're able to maximize the controls embedded in the technology solutions that you have today, right? And stop buying security products to secure products. Try to embed and get the products that you have to be more secure by ensuring that you're leveraging and configuring them correctly. So that would be my sort of keys. It sounds very easy. I know it's hard to do. Trust me, I lived through it for 4.5 years building a security program at a chemical manufacturing company from the ground up. But it is possible. It is doable. Just be creative. Think outside the box.
Well, excellent.
Yeah,
Pam, do you want to add to that?
I would just add, like, when you're smaller, you have to get creative. So lean on your infrastructure resources and your app dev resources and really train them on security practices. It might be your best alternative to hiring more individuals. And I love what Tomas said, like, make sure that you're leveraging what you've got. Don't look for the shiny object. And if you think about security, a lot of it has to do with communication. And in smaller practices, you have the advantage of you can talk to everyone. So, take advantage of that, build your communication strategy, and leverage the people that you have. Really great, brilliant response from Tomas. Not much more to add.
All right, well, hit our last question before we sign off today. Have you found it effective to execute simulation activities and use the data to support enhancement in processes, technology investment, and funding? This is from Robert Pace. Who wants to take that on? Pam, you want to close it out?
I'm not sure I understood. Can you say that again?
Sure. Have you found it effective to execute simulation activities, so like tabletop exercises, and use the data to support an enhancement in your processes, technology investments, and funding?
Absolutely. 100%. If you document the the lessons learned out of those programs and you actually show where you're growing and learning, that is absolute great evidence back to your leadership and how you're functioning, how you're collaborating with different divisions in your organization, and what you're seeing pop in from those exercises. And if you're not doing it with your executives, you should be, because engaging them in that process gives them a feel for what that feels like, and it helps educate them alone, and they feel the power of what you're doing day after day. So I think it's 100% effective.
Well, thank you, Tomas, and thank you, Pam. What a great session. I had so much fun. It went by so fast. I want to ask everybody at home to fill out the survey. Give us your feedback on what you thought about today's program. And also, if you're in need of those CPE credits, and many of you probably are, it's getting close to the end of the year, make sure you let us know what you need, and we'll get you that email in your inbox tomorrow. Check your spam filter if you don't hear from us by midday. Please have a great holiday. I know we just finished Hanukkah and now we've got Christmas and New Year's coming up. Be safe, be merry, enjoy each other's company. I know it's been a strange couple of years, but I hope that everyone gets to see family and friends and have a little time to celebrate and get some rest too out there and do some fun things while you wind down. Our offices at 10 are closed from the 23rd of December and will reopen on January 4th. So also, we have a number of events coming up next year in 2022. So check out our upcoming events calendar. Also, we have our ISE Award nominations open. So I hear some possible projects here, and maybe a nomination for Tomas for being the Information Security Executive of the Year. So we'd love to hear from all of you. Let us know your success stories. And I want to say a very special thank you to Cisco. We kicked off the year with our first webinar, and now we're closing off 2021 with Cisco. And that's actually how I have my very cool Cisco mug, is because you guys sent that to me in appreciation for our partnership that we've done for many, many years. So we appreciate you guys. I'm very grateful to Cisco. I know we're going to be doing some more stuff together next year, and I just have a special place in my heart for all of my friends at Cisco. And actually, you acquired one of the companies I worked for many, many years ago called Landcope Factoid. So yes, absolutely. So in the spirit of things, I am actually a Cisco alumni through an acquisition 13 years after the fact. So anyway, have a great holiday. Thank you, Tomas. And thank you, Pam. I really, really had a lot of fun with this topic. So I hope everyone at home enjoyed it too and had some good takeaways. Be merry. Happy New Year. See you guys in 2022. Have a good one.